Welcome to the Camcoder video on very first steps to ARM programming. The view you have in front of you will be used as a Komodo or an ARM program simulator on paper. Before we do that, let's introduce some concepts. Maybe the first important point to talk about before we even get into ARM programming is basically, what is a program? Well, a program can be viewed as a sequence of steps, and these are a sequence of instructions. More important than that is the fact that these instructions actually make up and are the implementation of an algorithm. So what we're going to talk about today is algorithms or programmings in a depiction of an ARM simulator on paper. So maybe the first thing we should say is, how do we view an algorithm in this simulator? Well, the simulator itself is broken down into, in the majority anyway, three main areas. You'll see the program as a sequence of instructions in this area here. This area here will give you a view of the program. That will look something like the program you write when you write it in an editor. So I'll just put one in now. So this is a view of a program that you might load in to Komodo. And as you can see, it's a sequence of instructions. So the algorithm's stored and loaded into a view. And the view in this case is a program view. So we'll leave it there. But where is this actually stored? Well, the algorithm, this, is actually stored in memory. So this is the area of the Komodo simulator that looks at the memory. Now I should point this out before I start and make it more explicit. First, let's go back to the program. Once the program's loaded into the program window, you'll be able to read it, in the sense that if you look at the first line, you'll be able to see that it says, when you get used to the ARM instructions, one of the instructions that you're used to. In this case, LDR space R1, AVAR, which really says load R1 with the variable at location AVAR. But that is not what the memory sees, or what the CPU processes. This area of memory here, and we'll load it in now, is loaded in when the program's loaded. So this is really what the processor sees, or a view of it. So this is a view of the information that the processor sees. So what is this? Well, you might think that this is a bit strange and you can't read it, and it seems to be numbers. Well, the trick here is to realise that these are hexadecimal numbers. The easiest way to see that is to look at one of them and see that actually they appear to range from 0 to F. So that is the range of a hexadecimal number. Of course, in the real computer they'll be represented as binary, ones and zeros, but for us, human beings, we normally view this in this type of representation. So, in answer to our question, then, can we view in a simulator the memory? Yes, we can. We will see it in the bottom memory window on the bottom right hand side. We're also able to look at the data. So that's a view of the data. But a bit further down, if we look at the program we'll have a look at later, if we looked at the program window, we'd see that the data is stored in a sequence of defined words. There should be a W there, so it should be DEFW. And these define in our program, when we're writing in a text editor, the variables we're going to use and their values. Now let's look at them when they're placed into the memory. So when they're placed into memory, they will actually just look like numbers, and here they are. So as you can see in the top window, what we've called the program window, we can see a representation of the code we've loaded in, and it's what's termed human understandable, whereas the numbers in the memory locations are actually numeric only and don't have any of this symbolic text with them. Okay, so now we've answered basically again where we can see the data in memory, and we've even put some in memory. Now, how does the algorithm process data? Now this is one of the most profound questions you should ever ask when you're being and undertaking a program. So how does it do that? How do these numbers get processed? Well, basically these numbers are moved over and into registers, stored in registers, and then a number of them are added together. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add a bit of metadata to our on-paper model. So the first bit of metadata is that in the registers window on the left, there's a set of registers. We've delineated R0 to R6. There's actually a few more than that. Also, we're going to add the addresses in the program window, which we're going to use for our example in a minute, and the addresses in memory. And as you can see, you can point the addresses in the program window and the memory at the same locations. So let's go back to our question then. How does an algorithm process the data? And as I've said, this is probably the most profound question. It requires the user, us, to have insight into how the program runs on a computer. A program is composed of sets or lists of instructions, and I've shown you these. So let's now load them into the computer. As you see, what we've done now is we load them in to particular addresses. Okay? So now we've loaded a sequence of instructions into the computer. And that's called the program, which the processor is going to sequence through. Now, to enable the processing of the data, which is actually held in memory, well, let's move on now to where the data is. So we'll just overlay the memory addresses of the data. And the data is actually stored here. Now let's do that in the memory as well. And we'll see, there's the data. Let's move it up a bit. There's the data in the memory as well. So this is normally done on an instruction by instruction basis, and that means the processing of the data. So what did I just say there? Well, let's just remove this data a minute and go back to have a look at the instructions in the program window. So let's come back to that terminology, and it said this is done on instruction by instruction basis. So this means when the first instruction or one instruction runs, and we're going to focus on this one, which says load register 1 with a variable or the data located at a var, it means that at this stage on this instruction the data is moved from the memory to the